Hi and welcome back to MDriven training course. This is chapter 10 and I thought we should look a bit on different troubles that you will end up in from time to time. So if you remember from last time, we were in the state machine, so we can go into the state diagram again. And if we were in a end reaction like this, and there's the naming of things. As soon as you are not exact, you will get errors, and those errors will show up as both immediately in the OCL editor like this, trying to explain what the error is, like car transfer ownership document is not a member of car, and that's apparently correct because we can see here that it's called car transfer ownership documents. So adding an S will remove that. But if we have this error and we save, we will also get this red dot up here stating that there's an error in the complete model. Pressing that error will usually take us to where the problem resides. Let's see if it does that in this case. If I press this one, no, it doesn't. So that's something that I will have to report, so that we should change. But we can see here that car entry action in ownership transaction, car transfer is not a member of car. Car entry action in ownership transaction. So, and that might not be the best of error descriptions either, but since this is called in ownership transaction, this state, so a good thing would be if the class of the state was added as well. Yeah, it's added here, car entry action. So we are on a car, so we know that that's okay, and the entry action, pushing this is the entry action, so it's not too far off. But another interesting thing is how to, let's fix this one by adding the S. If we check other places where we might get into trouble, now that I've fixed it, I'm going to save, and when I save, the check is run again, and I get a clean slate here. If I want to do this manually without saving, I can do that by just clicking this, and it runs and comes back as clean, so that's good. If we were in the actions part, if I double click this one, I get into the auto diagram for car, and I also see the class actions that are in the car, these yellow things. So if I were to go to one of these, and there was something wrong here, like an extra S here, if I were to save that, I would get another type of issue, car trigger close sale, invalid expression, car trigger close sale. Close sale is not a member of car. Okay, if I press that one, I get routed to this window where the error is, and I see some indication where the error is, and I can go into the OCL editor and see that doesn't recognize close sales. It's not a member of car. So I need to fix that like that. And save to remove the errors. So in order to actually, when you execute and you expect to see the same behavior as the drawing, the definition has defined, you should always make sure that you don't have any issues up here, because as soon as you do, there's a deviation between what the framework is able to understand from what you have said. So this is a clear signal that you haven't been able to communicate without any doubt with the framework. So as soon as this is clean, the framework is totally in agreement with what you have drawn and understands everything. So that's a good thing to know, and make sure that you end up with a clean slate as much as possible. So changing the subject to link classes again, because in a prior chapter we discussed this historic ownership, and we added the historic ownership, but we didn't talk too much about how we will be able to access these objects that will be in this link. And if we double click this one to get the auto diagram, click let's see, click slightly. If we click on the text, we go into edit, but it's slightly above or on this corner here. That corner takes us into the action, but between the text and the frame, we get into the auto diagram. So what we can see here is that these are what we call, they are not drawn as ordinary links because they are dotted, and these are what we call inner links. So why is it an inner link? Well, as we see on the car, this is still the association or the link. It's goes from car to car owner, and historic ownership sort of sits with this dotted line on this association, meaning that it's an association class, as we discussed, that association class, historic ownership. But there are ways to get to these objects from car to car owner, and that isn't really shown in OCL or class diagrams. It's drawn like this, but there are a way to get to this one from here and a way to get to it from here. And we have solved it this way, that if you click this one and go into historic ownership, you see these ways, and those are sort of links added for you automatically, since you have a association clause. The default name on this historic ownership will be from historic ownership back to car owner will be person, and from historic ownership car. But from car owner it will be historic ownership, but that's a many link, so that we probably would rather call historic ownerships. And the same thing here, from car to historic ownership, but that's a multi-link. So how can we control these names all over here? Yes, we do that by, let's see, let's go back to, it's actually easier to select this association here. Then we see these two ends, association end, car's owner used to own. And we see link role name, and we also see inner link name. So the inner link name we already set, but the link role name we haven't discussed. So depending on what I set here, these names will be updated. So this is from, so the inner link name is what the naming will be. It says down here, the name to navigate onwards to target from link class. So link class onwards to target from car owner. Following this link car's owner used to own. Coming up here. So coming up here is actually the link role name, and that's default, the name to navigate to the link class. So from here up to here. And then we might want to call that historic ownerships to deviate from the default, which didn't had the plural S. And now I changed something. Maybe we make use of that somewhere in the model. Let's see. If I save and I get an error like this, I can see that there's a few places where I actually have broken the logic just by changing this from the default name, and the default name was pretty much like that. So if I change it back, the errors goes away. So this is always a decision that you have to make. It's always opportune to have as good naming as possible, as early on as possible. But you will always discover that you will want to update the name at a late stage. And you shouldn't be too afraid of doing that. So it's better to fix things and to live than to live with the errors for the rest of your life. So I'm going to go ahead and set this S here, and I'm going to save to get the error, and then I'm simply going to go through this one by one to amend. And since a good practice is to do these changes one by one, so now I've only changed one of the ends, not this one. So I'm gonna do these one by one to make it easier for me to fix them. So let's see, the first error here said it's error in derivation, date purchase. So the derivation OCL, date purchase. So apparently I've used it somehow here. Yes, and I set an S over there, and then I take the next one, person invalid expression in historic ownership. Let's go to, so that was a view, and I can see that this grid is must have an S over here, and then maybe I should also update the name of this to be consistent. And I have a few more left. So these are outer forms. I could regenerate the outer forms, or I could just change them myself, whatever suits me. And that was the last of the errors. Now I'm gonna be on the other end, and the link role name, the inner link name we set to person from before, but I'm gonna set this one to historic ownerships. And I get the list of errors. I'm gonna fix those real quick. Yeah, it was just the one. So what I have shown you now is changes to stuff that we have done before. And you might ask yourself, how come this is a course when I'm not really sure on what to do, and that I introduce errors or things that I need to change at a late date. And that's actually one of the strengths with working with the declarative development like this. In traditional coding, you would very much want to stick to your guns. Once you have said something, it's not necessarily doable to change it late in the game. It will wreck a whole lot of stuff, and it might be expensive and complex to repair it, to make it work again, to get back to an ordinary functionality. But MDriven is more of a tool that's introduces you to thinking and allows you to think. And as you think and discover new things, that better fits reality, and it's a better fit for the business to actually do their thing, you shouldn't be afraid. There is very low investment in what you have done before, and you can always follow the truth a bit more closely going forward. So it's important to know that change is frequent, and it's a good thing to get precision. Yes, switching subject a bit. When you do information systems, you will always want to produce some kind of documents. We call this class down here car transfer ownership document, but it's just an ordinary class. It doesn't even have any attributes, but it has some associations. But we still want to be able to pull out information and print it on paper in the end. So that's an important aspect of any information system, the ability to create reports. So we're going to look into how to do that. Yes, first let's see where we should put the action to actually pull out the report. So let's look at this class. We can see that, do we have that on any view model? Yeah, some auto forms, but nothing that we have designed of our own. Let's see on the car. Going into that, I can see that this is in the car seeker, and well, it's time to have a proper form for the car. Let's see, show car goes into the auto form car. Let's see, car seeker, and this car, show car. Yeah, this is a problem that it doesn't bring up any view model at all. So that's why we have seen that when we click this one, nothing happens. I'm going to drop that one. It's going to create a new view model, and we're going to call that proper car view. Say that the root object class of this view is car. This is also one that is supposed to be rooted, so I'm going to check root, meaning that it must have a root object to back it up, not like a seeker. And then I want to add a class action for on car to show this proper car view, like that. And I want to add a few things: the registration number of the car, the column, the state, so that will say what's the current state. Since we won't be able to write in this is controlled by the state machine, I might as well say that it is static to render it as a label instead. The brand of the car, Gonna just print the name of that. Yeah, and since I not don't want it to be presented as just name, I'm gonna remove that to only present brand of car, like this. Also static. And the car owner, also the name presented like name, because this car owner underscore name, so the logic is to only use what's after the underscore, after the last underscore, but you remove that and then it's car owner instead. Also static, because we don't want to change the name of the car owner while viewing the car. And now there are no more simple things to add, but we have some multi-links, like the car transfer ownership documents. And the previous owners. I'm gonna write up the car transfer ownership documents and a grid of those. And what we're gonna show in that grid is add a column for the seller's name. And again, we get the name part, but we want seller, so we're gonna remove this. And the buyer. I can also add the car, but that would be less interesting because that's the car that we are looking at. That's just following the link up to ourselves. So I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna remove the default column as string that was added here. Having done so, we can see that everything works by pressing play, getting the prototyping to start. And show proper car view. This didn't have any transactions on it. Show proper car view. This one has a transaction on it. It's BMW in Munich that sold it, and the buyer is this guy. So this is the auto form for the ownership document. Not that interesting, but what if we want a document, a report produced for this information? So that's what we're gonna do now. Heading back to the model and the car transfer ownership document. And we're gonna add a class action. We're gonna call that produce document. And the execute expression on that is that we now are in the context of one car transfer ownership document. So we can say self, and then it's open document reports, because open document is a standard that Microsoft has provided that pretty much produces Word documents like ODT for open document text documents and ODS for open document spreadsheets. We want to use this one, open document report show. And what that does is creates a report and tries to open it. Okay, how can that be so? So Wiki on open document report creates a report and tries to open it. So it's a name of a view model. You supply the name of a view model either as a string or by using the view model expression like this, the class name, view models, and the view model name. And let's go ahead and try to do that then. So we are an car transfer ownership document. Yeah, I can pick that if I don't want to write it. And that has view models. Well, it doesn't, but it should. And what should it be? What is that called? Well, it has the auto forms, but we're gonna do our own. The template for report. So I'm gonna have that name. That doesn't exist today, so we get all these errors, but that's okay because it's a quick fix to actually add that view model. And that should be then rooted in the car transfer ownership document. And I can check this box that it requires a root because it does. And what I want to do on this one is right click it and say add columns needed for report, which is a URL to the template where the actual template of the Word document will be, and also the ability to set the name on this. But now I have the name on this one, so I'm gonna go back and check if this logic is happy now, and it is. So this is a valid expression. Okay. Now, what is a template URL? So this is the template for car transfer ownership document report. It's actually not so much a view as it's just data that will be used populating a report template. So in order to signal that I'm not going to use the UI part of this, I'm going to remove this checkbox, use placing hints. And then this area is actually hidden for us, so we don't need to see that for this case. Where can we find a template? So that template needs to be, we need to be able to read it from the application. Probably, so since the application is based in our web server, we need an address for the web server, but let's see. How can we get a template into our application? So there's a lot of things going on now, maybe, but if we go to the file menu here and show current model directory, we see that we have the model name here, start. What we want to do is to have a Word document that's going to act as our template, and we need to have that shifted up to the web server whenever we upload or start the application. Heading back to the Open Document Report show, we see here that we get some more information, but what I want to search for are the assets, because we can see the document template as an asset. So assets TK, something that shows up. Assets TK is a strategy to move files along with your model onto the server that runs your turnkey application every time you upload the model. So that's something that we want to do, and then it should be named as your model file underscore assets tk, and then anything under that is what we choose it to be. For this scenario, I'm gonna do a new folder and call that start, because my model file, this modeler, was called start. If yours called something else, you should use that name, but I guess it's called start as well. And then assets tk, and it should only be one underscore like that. From here I can go into this one and say that I have a folder called content, and in that folder content I might have a new Microsoft Word document. Let's see, let's go about it the other way. I'm going to start Word and say this will be my template, and I'm going to save that, save as this PC, and browse, and I'm going to find this spot like that, and I'm going to change this type to being an open document text. So this will be my template. Maybe I'm pushing it when having a lot of spaces here, because this will be a URL. So I'm going to remove those and camel case this a bit. Like this. So this will be my template. If I now save this file, I got an error because, and that's because I still have, Word has this file locked for me. So I'm gonna shut down Word for a little bit, save, and what I'm hoping is that giving this address and going to content slash, let's see what I called it, there will be a document. So there it was. Good. So we do have a URL with a template. Good. And that URL with a template I can put into the template URL, and that's just a string, so I'm going to append it with these string markers to make that a string. If I wouldn't have, it would have tried to interpret this as an OCL expression, which is it is not. It's a string constant like this. So that's the template URL to our report, and the report file name can be also a string. Then the file, the report sales report for car, and then I can free to use expression syntax to get to details. So I'm gonna self dot yeah, I'm gonna move up to the car that we talk about, following the link association and having the registration number. So, and since that is, yeah, that's fine, I'm gonna add a file extension on this, .odt, open document text. So having done that, could it be that I will be able to push this once I've selected this one, produce document, and I get the sales report for, let's see what it says. Close that one, don't save. The sales report for car 789. Alright, so we're able to produce this document, but this doesn't have any data in it. So in order to get any data there, we need to know how to fill a get the data into a document template. So that comes now. Gonna go back to where we store the template. So that's in the start asset TK content, and this will be my template. I'm gonna open that with Word, and in order to know what's available for me, I'm gonna write percent meta percent, just like that. I'm gonna save that and close it so that the logic can, it's not locked by Word once I do save here, because if I do save, everything is uploaded again, and I can produce a new document. Let's refresh this one, produce document, and I get the sales report again. But now the percent meta tag expands all the properties from the view model, and these will be, if I have these in my template, they will be expanded to data in turn. So that's cool. That means that I can head back to my view model defining the report data and sort of add stuff that I think is important for this sales document, like the buyer's name, and I want to treat that as a string called buyer, and the seller's name, and I want to treat that as a seller. And at this point I also want the registration number. I also want the brand of the car, but seeing here that doesn't show up as something I can choose. That's because this logic only goes sort of one step, but I can easily go in this direction, for example, to add a column from the model. So what is it that you want to add? Well, I want to follow the car. Now you see that this builds up an expression, and I want to follow the from car, I want to follow to brand of car, and self car, brand of car, and I want to take the name of the brand. And so this is the expression that I want. I'm gonna click that one, and now I have it here under the name, but I want to call it brand. Saving that, and if I now produce a document and open that, I can see that all these values will be available for me. I can now copy those and actually change the template, the original template that only has this meta tag in it, which in turn expanded to this. And what I want to do is to do a template that says the buyer named buyer. So this will be expanded into the data from our view model for the buyer. Has purchased the car from or of yeah, maybe we say the of type, see this from. Seller. So suppose that was the report, and maybe we want a title on this: official purchase document. Format that, and this is something to look up for. Now the spell check has involved itself into my document template, and that might mess with identification of this as a label. So I'm going to turn off the spell checking temporarily for this document. And how do I do that? Review spelling and grammar, and ignore all. And anything goes in a document like this, so you can have pictures or things like that, and also pictures as data. We will look at that soon enough. But this is the main idea on how to design reports. Saving that, closing it in order to allow the logic to upload it once I've saved this, and heading back to the application to produce a document, and I will get official purchase document. The buyer named Hans Carlson X has purchased the car 789 of type BMW from BMW in Munich. So that's how you work with injecting information into paper documents. We will end here for now. Okay, thank you.